smash the like button, subscribe if you dare, and drop a comment if you think you could survive what you about to hear. Because once this story begins, there's no release, no parole, and no turning back. The sirens were already fading when the convoy reached the edge of the steppe. Blue and red lights dissolved into the early morning fog as armored vans rolled to a stop before a concrete wall that seemed to rise straight out of the frozen ground. There were no signs, no welcoming markers, no indication that this place even existed. Just floodlights, razor wire, and a black iron gate stamped with a single symbol, a dolphin, painted jet black. Inside one of the vans, a man sat hooded, wrists chained to his waist, ankles shackled so tightly the metal bit into bone. His name, at least on paper, was Viktor Sokolov. Age 42. Life sentence. No possibility of release. The kind of sentence that doesn't measure time in years, but in heartbeats left. When the gate opened, it did so silently. That silence was the first thing that unsettled Major Elena Morozova. Even after 20 years in Russia's criminal justice system, she stood outside the van, collar turned up against the cold, watching as the vehicle disappeared beyond the walls of Black Dolphin Prison. She had overseen transfers to maximum security facilities before, but this was different. This wasn't a prison meant to hold men until they changed. It was a place designed to erase them. Elena wasn't supposed to be here. Officially, Black Dolphin, Penal Colony Number 6, was off-limits to outside investigators. Journalists were barred. Independent observers denied. Even senior officials rarely set foot inside. But 3 weeks earlier, a sealed file had landed on Elena's desk in Moscow. No sender, no return address, just a stamped seal from the Federal Penitentiary Service and a single word written in red ink across the front. Anomaly. Inside were reports that didn't belong together. Missing internal logs, contradictory head counts, medical records that ended abruptly with no death certificates attached, inmates who appeared in transfer paperwork but vanished from all subsequent documentation, as if they'd been swallowed by the walls themselves. At the center of it all was Black Dolphin Prison. The official explanation was simple: clerical errors, data corruption, human mistakes in a system stretched thin. But Elena had learned long ago that bureaucracies didn't make the same mistake over and over again unless someone wanted them to. She had pushed, asked questions, filed requests. 2 days later, she was reassigned. 3 days after that, her apartment door had been opened while she slept. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just a message, loud and clear. Stop digging. Elena didn't stop. Now she stood in the shadow of the most feared prison in Russia, a facility that housed serial killers, terrorists, cannibals, men whose crimes were so brutal their names were never spoken aloud. Every inmate here was serving life without parole. There were no release dates because release did not exist. Black Dolphin was the end of the line. The warden, Colonel Sergei Volkov, met her just inside the gate. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face a map of old scars and deep-set lines. His uniform was immaculate, his expression carefully neutral. "You have exactly 48 hours, Volkov said, his voice low and controlled. "You will see only what you are authorized to see. You will ask no questions outside the scope of your assignment." "And if I do?" Elena asked. Volkov's eyes flicked toward the inner gates, where armed guards waited with dogs straining at their leashes. "Then you will leave," he said, "and you will never come back." They walked through a series of corridors, each door heavier than the last. Steel screamed against steel as locks disengaged, then slammed shut behind them. Elena counted 8 doors before they reached the administrative wing. No windows, no clocks. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and something older, something human. "This prison operates on absolute control," Volkov said as they walked. "Inmates are blindfolded whenever they leave their cells. They walk bent at the waist, hands cuffed behind their backs. They speak only when spoken to. They eat alone. They exercise alone. Silence is enforced. And if they don't comply?" Elena asked. Volkov didn't answer immediately. "Then the system corrects them," he said finally. Elena was shown surveillance rooms where dozens of grainy black and white feeds flickered across monitors. Cells no larger than bathrooms. Men standing motionless, hands behind their backs, eyes fixed on the floor. Some rocked slightly, as if their bodies were trying to remember movement. One feed caught her attention. Cell B, 17. The inmate stood facing the wall, perfectly still. His head was shaved, his frame thin but tense, like a wire pulled too tight. A small placard beneath the screen listed his name. Viktor Sokolov. Why is he standing? Elena asked. There's no count scheduled. Volkov glanced at the monitor. Discipline measure. He requested medical attention outside designated hours. So you punish him by making him stand. Elena pressed. Volkov's jaw tightened. He murdered 6 people, including 2 children. You should be asking why he's still alive. Elena said nothing, but she kept watching the screen. Something was wrong. Over the next day, she reviewed internal records under supervision. Everything looked clean on the surface. Too clean. Incident reports were vague, repetitive, copy-pasted language used to describe completely different events. Medical logs showed routine checkups for inmates who, according to transfer records, should not have been there anymore. When she asked about it, Volkov blamed outdated systems. These men do not leave, he said. Sometimes paperwork lags behind reality. And sometimes reality lags behind paperwork, Elena replied. That night, unable to sleep, Elena replayed the files in her mind. One name kept resurfacing. Alexei Markov. According to the records, Markov had arrived at Black Dolphin 5 years earlier, sentenced to life for a string of contract killings tied to organized crime. His psychological profile described him as methodical, intelligent, highly manipulative. 3 years into his sentence, his medical records stopped. No death certificate. No transfer notice. Nothing. Just blank space. The next morning, Elena requested access to the medical wing archives. Volkov denied it. In the heart of Russia, there's a place where hope goes to die. It's called Black Dolphin, the country's most notorious prison, home to its most dangerous criminals, killers, terrorists, and worse. But what if the greatest danger wasn't from the inmates, but from the prison itself? My name is Elena, and I was a special investigator sent to Black Dolphin. My official mission was to review security protocols. My real mission? To find out what happened to my predecessor, a man named Ivanov, who vanished from inside this fortress without a trace. The official story was escape. I knew better. You don't just walk out of Black Dolphin. From the moment I arrived, I felt a chilling presence. The guards were stone-faced, their silence heavier than the steel doors. The inmates, men who had committed unspeakable acts, looked at me with something other than hate. It was fear. They were terrified of this place. My investigation started in Ivanov's last known location, his small, bleak office. The file on his desk was for a prisoner named Dmitry the Ghost Volkov. Dmitry was a phantom, an urban legend among criminals, a master escape artist who was finally caught. But his file was strange, almost empty. No visitor logs, no psychological evaluations, just a name and a sentence. Life. I requested to speak with Dmitry. The warden, a cold, imposing man named Petrov, refused. That prisoner is not to be disturbed, he said, his eyes like chips of ice. For your own safety. That's when I knew I was on the right track. I started digging into the prison's old records, late at night when the halls were quiet except for the distant, mournful cries of the inmates. I found whispers of a shadow wing, a section of the prison that didn't appear on any official blueprints. They said it was where the prison kept its real secrets. One night, a veteran guard, a man with haunted eyes, slipped me a hand-drawn map. He pointed to a spot deep in the oldest part of the prison. Ivanov was looking for this place, he whispered, before scurrying away. He was looking for the source of the whispers. Following the map, I navigated a labyrinth of damp, forgotten corridors. The air grew colder, and I could hear a faint, rhythmic sound, like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. Finally, I found a hidden door behind a collapsed wall. It led to a narrow staircase, spiraling down into complete darkness. Down there, I found it. The shadow wing. It wasn't for prisoners. It was a makeshift laboratory. And in the center of the room, on a cold metal table, lay the body of a man. It wasn't Ivanov. On a monitor nearby, a video was playing on a loop. It showed Dmitry Volkov, not in a cell, but in this very room, his face contorted in agony as strange symbols glowed on his skin. He wasn't a prisoner. He was an experiment. Suddenly, the heavy door slammed shut behind me. I warned you, investigator. A voice echoed from the darkness. It was Warden Petrov. Some secrets are meant to be kept. He explained that Black Dolphin wasn't just a prison. It was a research facility trying to unlock, or create, the perfect soldier using the prisoners as raw material. Dmitry Volkov was their star subject, a man with a unique genetic marker. Ivanov had discovered the truth, and he paid the price. Petrov thought he had me trapped, but he underestimated me. And he underestimated the prisoners who had been living in terror. As he approached, the alarms in the main block began to blare. The old guard had done his part. I had sent him a message, create a diversion. Chaos erupted throughout Black Dolphin. In the confusion, I fought my way out. I didn't just have evidence. I had the location of the lab, the warden's confession on my hidden recorder, and the will to expose everything. Black Dolphin was designed to keep monsters in. But the real monster was the system itself, and I was about to drag it out into the light. My investigation was over, but the fight for justice was just beginning. Thanks for watching. If you love a good mystery, make sure to subscribe for more stories from the shadows. See you next time. By the time morning arrived, Black Dolphin Prison felt different. The corridors were quieter than before, if that was even possible. Guards avoided eye contact. Doors seemed to linger half a second longer before unlocking, as if the building itself were hesitating. Elena Morozova noticed all of it. She had spent her career reading rooms, reading people, reading the spaces between official explanations. And right now, the entire prison was holding its breath. Colonel Volkov kept her close that day. Too close. He walked beside her instead of ahead, his presence heavy, deliberate. 2 additional guards followed at a distance that felt less like protection and more like containment. You will conclude your inspection today, Volkov said as they moved down a corridor lined with identical steel doors. Your report will state that Black Dolphin operates within regulation. And if it doesn't? Elena asked. Volkov stopped walking. Slowly, he turned to face her. You've seen what happens to men who test limits here, he said. Do not imagine you are exempt. Elena held his gaze. I don't imagine anything. I verify. That word, verify, hung in the air like a challenge. They reached the surveillance wing again, the room of flickering monitors and humming machines. Elena scanned the screens, pretending to focus on routine feeds while her mind raced. The underground wing. Level 0. The file that shouldn't exist. She needed proof. Something physical. Something that couldn't be erased with a keystroke. It came sooner than she expected. A guard entered the room and leaned toward Volkov, whispering urgently. Elena caught only fragments. Unresponsive, refused protocol. D-wing. Volkov's jaw tightened. Stay here, he told Elena. I'm coming with you, she said immediately. No, that wasn't a request, Elena replied. For a moment, it looked like Volkov might refuse outright. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. They moved fast through the prison, descending into older sections where the walls were thicker, the lighting dimmer. This wing felt different, colder, heavier, like the air had settled here decades ago and never left. They stopped outside a reinforced door marked with faded Cyrillic lettering. D-block medical isolation. Inside, a single cell stood open. An inmate lay on the floor, motionless, guards forming a tense semicircle around him. Elena recognized him instantly. Viktor Sokolov. His face was pale, lips tinged blue, eyes half open but unfocused. A medic knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. He collapsed during compliance posture, the medic said. No warning. Elena stepped closer. How long was he standing? The medic hesitated, then looked to Volkov. Answer her, Volkov said flatly. 6 hours, the medic admitted. Elena felt a surge of anger. That's torture. Volkov's expression didn't change. It is discipline. Discipline doesn't stop a heart, Elena snapped. The medic looked up. He's alive. Barely. As Viktor was lifted onto a stretcher, his eyes fluttered. For a split second, his gaze locked onto Elena's. There was no fear in them, only urgency. His fingers twitched weakly. Elena leaned closer, ignoring Volkov's warning glance. What? She whispered. Viktor's lips moved, barely forming words. Below, he rasped. They take them below. Before she could ask more, he lost consciousness. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She replayed Viktor's words again and again. They take them below. At 2:17 a.m., she made her decision. She dressed quietly, slipped into the corridor, and moved through the prison with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. She had memorized guard rotations, blind spots in the surveillance coverage. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The entrance to the underground wing wasn't marked. There were no signs, no obvious doors. Just a section of wall in the oldest part of D-Wing where the stone looked darker, newer. as if it had been replaced. Elena pressed her hand against it. A panel slid open with a soft hiss. Behind it was a stairwell descending into darkness. The air grew colder with each step. The smell changed too, less disinfectant, more damp concrete and metal. The lighting was minimal, strips of dim white along the walls, flickering as if reluctant to illuminate what lay below. At the bottom, Elena reached another door. This one had no handle, only a biometric scanner. She froze. Footsteps echoed above her. Elena ducked into the shadows just as Colonel Volkov emerged at the top of the stairwell. He paused, scanning the darkness, his expression unreadable. "You should not be here," he said, his voice carrying easily down the stairs. Elena stepped into the light. "Neither should this place," she replied. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Volkov sighed. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," he said. "Then explain it," Elena demanded. Volkov descended slowly, stopping beside her at the sealed door. "This wing predates modern Black Dolphin," he said quietly. "It was built for men the state could not execute and could not release." "And couldn't document," Elena added. Volkov didn't deny it. "They are removed from the system," he continued. "No names, no records, no deaths. What happens to them?" Elena asked. Volkov placed his hand on the scanner. The door slid open. "Control," he said. "Pure control." The corridor beyond was narrower, the cells smaller. No windows, no cameras visible. Inside each cell stood a single inmate, restrained upright, faces obscured by hoods. Some were whispering, some were silent. All were alive. Elena's chest tightened. "How long have they been here?" "Years," Volkov said. "Some longer." "This is illegal," Elena whispered. "It is effective," Volkov replied. As they walked, Elena noticed something else. A room at the end of the corridor, glass-walled, lit brighter than the rest. Inside stood a woman reviewing data on a screen. Dr. Irina Lebedeva. Elena recognized her from the files. Behavioral psychologist. Officially retired. Unofficially, the architect of something called the Atlas program. Lebedeva turned as they entered. "So," she said calmly, adjusting her glasses. The oversight finally arrived. "What is this place?" Elena demanded. Lebedeva smiled faintly. "The future of incarceration." She gestured toward the cells. "These men do not respond to punishment. They respond to environment. Remove identity, remove time, remove hope. What remains is compliance." "You're breaking them," Elena said. Lebedeva shook her head. "No, we are stabilizing society." Elena felt sick. "And Alexei Markov?" she asked. "Victor said they take them below." Lebedeva's smile faded. "Markov was resistant," she said carefully. "Even here." "What did you do to him?" Elena pressed. Lebedeva didn't answer. Instead, she pulled up a file on the screen. Markov's face appeared, older, thinner, eyes hollow. 2 weeks ago, Lebedeva said, he stopped responding to stimuli. "And?" Elena demanded. "And then," Lebedeva said quietly, "he remembered who he was." A chill ran through Elena. "That's impossible," Volkov said sharply. Lebedeva turned to him. "Is it?" She tapped the screen. Audio played. Markov's voice, hoarse but clear. "They're watching," he whispered. "But they're afraid. They're afraid of what happens if this place is known." The recording ended. Elena stared at Lebedeva. "You killed him." Lebedeva met her gaze. "No, we lost control of him." "And Victor?" Elena asked. "Is he next?" Volkov looked away. At that moment, alarms blared throughout the underground wing. Red lights flashed, bathing the corridor in an ominous glow. A guard burst in. "Sir, inmate Sokolov is conscious. He's refusing compliance. He's shouting." Elena's heart raced. "Shouting what?" she asked. The guard hesitated. "He's saying names," he said. "Names that don't exist." Elena looked at Volkov. "You can still stop this." Volkov's face was stone. "You don't understand," he said. "If this gets out, then the world finds out what Black Dolphin really is," Elena finished. She turned and ran. Behind her, chaos erupted. Doors slammed. Shouts echoed. Somewhere above, Viktor Sokolov was breaking the silence that had kept this place hidden for decades. Elena didn't know if she would make it out. But she knew one thing. Black Dolphin Prison wasn't just a place without release. It was a place without truth. And that truth was clawing its way to the surface. The first gunshot echoed through Black Dolphin like a crack in the earth itself. It wasn't loud enough to signal open violence, but it was unmistakable, a warning shot, fired somewhere deep within the prison's core. Elena Morozova froze at the top of the underground stairwell, her breath shallow, her pulse hammering in her ears. Behind her, alarms screamed. Red lights pulsed along the corridors like a living heartbeat. Viktor Sokolov was still shouting. His voice carried through the ventilation shafts, raw and unfiltered, bouncing off concrete and steel. Markov, Petrenko, Ilyasov, you erased us. Names. Real names. Names that did not exist in any official registry. Guards were running now, boots slamming against the floors in chaotic rhythm. The perfect, mechanical order Elena had witnessed for days was unraveling in real time. Black Dolphin was built on silence, on obedience enforced through isolation. Viktor had shattered that silence. And once broken, it could not be repaired. Elena moved fast, blending into the confusion, heading not toward the exit but deeper into the administrative wing. She knew she had one chance left, to get proof out of this place. Not files, not recordings, something undeniable. A body, or someone who should not exist. She reached the medical isolation corridor just as guards dragged Viktor Sokolov from his cell. He was barefoot, wrists cuffed, blood trailing from a split eyebrow. His eyes were wild, but his voice was steady. "They're beneath us," he shouted. "You buried us alive." A guard struck him across the mouth. Elena stepped forward instinctively. "Stop." Colonel Sergei Volkov appeared from the far end of the corridor, his uniform disheveled, his calm finally fractured. "Take him to level 0, Volkov ordered. Sedate if necessary." Viktor laughed, a broken, terrifying sound. "You can't put the truth back in the ground," he said. "It's already breathing." Elena locked eyes with Volkov. "If you take him down there," she said, "he dies." Volkov didn't deny it. "This prison exists because the world refuses to deal with monsters," he said. "We do what others won't." "And who decides who the monsters are?" Elena demanded. Volkov hesitated. That hesitation was enough. In that moment, a new alarm cut through the noise. Different. Lower. More urgent. Security breach. A voice crackled over the intercom, strained with panic. "Colonel, we've lost containment in level 0. Cells are unlocking." Volkov's face drained of color. "That's impossible," he whispered. But it wasn't. Dr. Irina Lebedeva stood alone in the underground control room, her fingers flying across the console. Sweat streaked her temples, but her expression was focused, almost serene. "They were never meant to stay erased forever," she murmured. She had designed the Atlas program to break men, to strip them of identity, memory, resistance. But in doing so, she had underestimated something fundamental. Human beings do not disappear quietly. Inmates in level 0 staggered from their cells, disoriented, blinking against the light. Some screamed, some wept, some stood silently, absorbing the impossible reality of freedom, however temporary. Above ground, the prison was descending into chaos. Guards retreated. Lock systems failed. Surveillance feeds cut to static one by one. Elena watched it unfold from the corridor, disbelief and horror twisting together in her chest. She saw Volkov make his decision. "Seal the prison," he barked into his radio. "No one leaves." Elena realized then what his real fear was. Not exposure. Survivors. She sprinted toward Viktor just as guards dragged him toward the stairwell. "Viktor," she shouted. "Can you walk?" He looked at her, bloodied but lucid. "I've been standing my whole life." With a sudden, desperate strength, she shoved one of the guards. Another stumbled. Viktor twisted, elbowing a third in the throat. It wasn't clean or graceful, it was raw, animal survival. They ran. Gunfire erupted behind them, bullets ricocheting off concrete. Elena felt one tear through the air inches from her head. They burst into the medical wing, alarms still screaming, and nearly collided with a group of men emerging from a sealed corridor. Men with shaved heads. Men with hollow eyes. Men who did not exist. Alexei Markov stood among them. Alive. Thinner. Older. But unmistakable. Elena's breath caught. Markov met her gaze and nodded once. "You're late." Before she could respond, Colonel Volkov appeared at the end of the corridor, weapon raised. "This ends now," he shouted. "Everyone down." No one moved. Markov stepped forward. "You can't kill us all," he said calmly. "And if you do, the truth still walks out with her." He gestured to Elena. Volkov's hand trembled. For years, he had believed in the system. Believed that control prevented chaos. That sacrifice was necessary. But looking at the men before him, Ghosts the state had buried alive. He saw not monsters, but mirrors. The gun slipped from his fingers. Sirens wailed outside the prison walls now. External sirens. Authorities. Oversight. The noise of a world that had finally noticed. Dr. Lebedeva was arrested in the control room, still trying to justify her work as guards cuffed her hands. She didn't resist. "They'll do it again," she said softly. "Just somewhere else." Elena, Victor, and Markov were escorted out under armed protection as dawn broke over the steppe. News helicopters circled overhead. Cameras flashed. Questions screamed from every direction. Black Dolphin Prison had been exposed. Official statements would later describe it as an unauthorized experimental program, a failure of oversight, a deviation from protocol. Volkov resigned. Lebedeva disappeared into the same system she had once controlled. And the men of Level 0? Some testified. Some vanished again, this time into witness protection, into anonymity, into lives that would never fully heal. Viktor Sokolov survived. His sentence was reviewed. Reduced. Not freedom, but a window. Alexei Markov testified once, then declined all further interviews. "Elena," he told her before leaving, "prisons aren't built to hold people. They're built to hold secrets." Months later, Elena published her report. It shook governments, sparked investigations, changed laws, or at least it pretended to. 3 months after Black Dolphin was reformed, a body was found in a decommissioned facility outside Novosibirsk. No name, no records, just a man standing upright in an empty cell, hands behind his back, eyes open. And on the wall, carved into the concrete with shaking fingers, were 5 words. The silence learned to move. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, because some truths don't stay buried forever.